Welcome to the Jennifer J. Hammond Podcast. Jennifer is a licensed realtor, educator, speaker, and best-selling author. Jennifer's goal is to help you find your yay in every day. Jennifer is grateful for the opportunity to educate, empower, and inspire you with powerful conversations, insights, and new viewpoints. Here's your host, Jennifer J. Hammond.
The amazing Peggy McColl to the podcast. Thank you so much for being here, Peggy.
Such a pleasure to be with you, Jennifer.
I'm so excited because there's so many things to talk about. You have been an author's coach for so many people. You've helped so many people just completely shift their mindset. And I call it to the yay mindset because I'm known for the yay. But one of the things that I'm so excited about is this new book that you have out, Savvy Wisdom. So this is the first time you've shifted things. Yes. So those are you watching us in video. She's holding it in her hands. Oh, she's kissing it. Savvy Wisdom. So this is a brand new thing. You haven't done one like this before because all your other ones were nonfiction, right?
Correct. Yes.
So yeah. I heard this rumor, my brother told me, that somebody on your staff just all of a sudden wrote it into your schedule to start writing this book. Is that true?
No, actually not quite. But what happened was, I used to do these videos on a regular basis. We called them morning manifestation videos. And I had been doing them for years and have created hundreds of them. And they're on different topics on manifesting. And so I had this girl that was working for me, and she would make a list of recommended topics, just things that she noticed that people were curious about or searching for. And so I would just go to this list. She put it in like a Google Drive where we could all access it. And I would just go down the list. And if I saw a title that I resonated with, I would record a video. So I went to the list and we cleaned it up. So removed anything that I'd already recorded. And the next item on the list was how I wrote my first fiction book. And I looked at that and thought, well, I've never written a fiction book. However, it was just in that moment. And this is so fascinating because people just get in their own way, right? Like, I think what happens is if I hadn't written a fiction book, I would think, well, I'm just not going to write one. What's the next item on the list? But I just started to play with the idea. Would I like to write a fiction book? And then immediately following that was, well, you're not even a great writer. And you certainly can't write fiction. And I just listened to these thoughts as they came up. And I thought, well, that's not going to serve me. So first of all, do I want to write a fiction book? That was the first question before we deal with the next one. And it's like, yes, I'd love to write a fiction book and I'd love to write a parable. And that idea has been sort of there percolating for a number of years because one of my books, which was book number six, my sixth book is called The One Thing. And I was going to write it as a parable. And it was based on my own life journey, but we ended up writing it as a self-help book, like that search for the one thing that's going to fix your life. And then I thought, well, I'm going to write this parable. And then I thought, well, maybe I should get a ghostwriter to write it. And I thought, well, no, I want to write it. I want to have it uniquely mine. And then I just said to myself, okay, Peggy, if you're going to do this, you have to believe certain things. One, believe that you're a great writer. Two, that not only you've done this, but you've written a great book. Three, that it's going to be fun and it's going to flow easily and harmoniously, and you're going to get it done in 10 days. So I just made a decision. I'm doing it, and this is how I'm going to do it. This is what I'm going to bring forth with me. These are the beliefs that I choose to hold on to because I know those beliefs will serve me, and I've set a due date. And that's what initiated the whole idea behind writing Savvy Wisdom. But when I started, I didn't know what it was going to be called. I didn't know what his name was going to be. I knew it would be based on my life and meeting Bob Proctor, but it just came to me. And as I was writing, it unfolded, and it was the most incredible experience I've ever had. I literally opened up to spirit, opened up to the universe, and just said, what needs to come through me, have it come through me, and put my fingers on the keyboard, and I let it flow. and it flowed.
And it flowed. I love this story. I've actually listened to it twice now on Audible. And I have to say, one of the things that's very dear to me is that it's your voice and Bob Proctor's voice.
Yes.
I mean, wow, that makes it so real, even though, again, it's based on your life and it's a parable. But again, to have it come to life, because you can tell your passion by someone's voice. It's one of the reasons podcasts, radio shows, anything that someone can hear you, they can also feel your spirit, your enthusiasm, your pain, all of the things that you talk about. And you touch some really tough subjects. And one I wanted to start with is suicide. And you talk about, again, as a teenager, so often when something happens to us, it feels overwhelming. And for me, I had a really horrible childhood in so many ways, my mother being an alcoholic, but also physically and mentally very, very abusive. And I know you also, so you touch on that overwhelming feeling and then feeling like the only way to solve it is suicide. So will you talk a little bit about that part?
Sure. Yeah, it's a dark place to be. And, when I think back, and of course you also heard, because you listened to the Audible version of Savvy Wisdom, you also heard that my mother attempted suicide. And in the book, there's a number of things in the book that are based on my life and they've been modified slightly. There's some things in the book that never happened, I simply made up. And we can talk about that another time on what's really based on the truth. But in the beginning, if you remember, Sophie is the character, right? Sophie and Savvy. So Sophie's mom, when Sophie was 14, her mother tried to kill herself with a hose, right? Garden hose that she cut the end off, put it in the exhaust pipe, the other one into the window, closed the garage door and started her car. And then my father found her. That did happen. And it happened like that. And I remember when my father called us kids into the living room the next day and we had a family meeting and he told us what happened. Now, I don't know why he told us what happened. Maybe he wanted us to somehow be more sympathetic to her and be better kids. I don't know. But anyways, he told us what happened. But when you get to that place of suicide, so I learned it at a young age. Like I observed my mother being very depressed and she was not happy. And pretty much for most of her life. Like I remember even I lost my brother, in real life and in the book. But I remember when my brother died, my mother didn't want to live either. And I remember saying to her, Mom, you have 3 other kids, why would you want to leave? You have a family. And she's like, you don't understand. And I didn't understand. I don't know what it's like. It's horrific to lose a child. It's got to be the worst thing ever to lose a child. So I didn't understand. And I think that's what happens to suicidal people is when you're in that dark place, regardless of what got you there or what brought you to that point in your life, you don't see a way out. And you see that as the way out. And I know people say, oh, they're cowards and whatever, but they're not thinking about, oh, I'm going to be a coward. What they're thinking about is the pain of living is too great. And I just want to leave this earthly plane. It's like when you're in that state, that emotional state, it's all dark. You don't see a clearing. You don't see a way out. You don't see what's possible. You're just wanting to end the pain, and it's emotional pain. And so, I've been doing a lot of TV shows lately as well through my publicist. And one of the things that we focused on in the initial segments of the interviews was suicide because of what's happening right now in the world with COVID. Our suicide rates are quadruple in our country. People are confined and, there's a lot of things that are going on and they feel lost. They feel like there is no hope. And so I think it's all of us to have an opportunity to notice if someone is feeling sad or they say something like, they're planning on ending their life, pay attention to it and find a way that I think we can all help each other by uplifting the world in wonderful ways. Get them a copy of Savvy Wisdom. There's a great way. Invite them into this story. People are being inspired by how Sophie turned her life around, which is really how I turned my life around.
And I do love the fact that in the book, as you're going through it, you can identify with Sophie in that, again, when you're in that dark place, and I think that, I don't know if everybody has gotten to that point where they are on the edge of suicide, but even I know with my brother, I've had more than once a challenge where he was right on that edge. And, one, I recognized it just because we're so incredibly tied together and we have an amazing spiritual I don't even know. It's a connection that is really beautiful because I can recognize, hey, something wrong is wrong, and call them up, and I always try to help. But I think one of the other things is in your character in there, you are really raw and honest about, well, why would I take this? It seems a little too happy-go-lucky,
Right.
savvy character who just, looks at everything as if it's so easy. And I think that so often that's the way, that attitude that comes there. So number one, I didn't ask you before, but I do feel like we should, I feel like everybody should know who Bob Proctor is, but if they don't know who Bob Proctor is, would you give a quick little overview of who Bob Proctor is and how did you actually meet him?
Okay, perfect. Yes. Bob Proctor to me is the greatest teacher on success that's on the planet today. I mean, he's 87 on his next birthday. He has studied success extensively for 60 years, and he has a great gift for communicating that message on how anyone can turn their life around. And it's been what he's dedicated his life to, his adult life to. And so I met Bob when I was 20 years of age. I was working for a company in Toronto, Ontario, Canada, and they had hired this guy, Bob Proctor, to come and do this thing called a kickoff event. And I remember it was January 1979. And so they hired Bob to come in and do a kickoff event for all the employees because we were in a really exciting business or an industry at that time, and our business was growing at a rapid rate, and we were the number one in the country. And so it was a pretty positive, environment to be in. And so they brought in Bob, and they had this evening event where we're all told as employees, you have to go to this thing. I didn't want to go to it. I was a miserable, negative person. I was like, what do you mean we have to take an evening out of our own personal life to go to this thing, rather than focus on, oh my God, like this guy can change your life or help you change your life. And so I went anyways, and I got there and I just thought, I'm just going to find a seat in the back of the room. I ended up sitting the front row center, and he came on stage, and it was like, he woke me up. He just started to say things, he talked about, if you want your life to change, you must change, as you know, from Savvy Wisdom and the embroidered handkerchief that Savvy hands Sophie at the end of the first chapter. That was one of the first messages that I ever heard from Bob. And that's really what created the first shift for me, because he said, if you want your life to change, you must change. And as simple as you and I may hear those words and understand it today, not everybody understands it. They think it's someone else's responsibility, or it's the government, or it's the parent or the employer, or someone else who's going to come in and fix your life. And that's not the way it works. So that was, that's when I first met him. And that's when the realization started to occur for me.
Well, and I love that was one of the things that you mentioned, because I do want to share with you, and I'm not sure the sound will be great on this, so we may fix this in the post, but here, I wanted you to hear a new version of that song that my brother wrote for you.
Oh.
Let me see if I can get it to play for you. And that's the whole thing, is if you want life to change. Yeah! We put a whole
I haven't heard that version.
Nope, that's a new one. I just had that one done by some musicians, and I sent it to my brother to get his approval before I could surprise you today with it.
I love it.
We'll send that copy to you as well. I think it's so important. And again, you've inspired so many people with this story. And I know you also, one of the other things you touched on earlier that I want to go back to so we don't overlook it, is you also talk about something that is very raw for people right now in COVID-19. And that's losing your brother, losing a loved one, and in a sudden way where it's happening to people all over right now. And how do you move through that? So will you talk a little bit about, one, in the parable, you also are very raw, and you talk about your thoughts, which again, people don't normally want to be that honest.
Right.
So tell us a little bit more about how can people get through that sudden shock of losing someone?
Yeah, it's interesting that you asked that question today, Jennifer, because I received a message this morning from a good friend of mine to say that, someone that he knew passed away last night, 57 years young, died of COVID, perfectly healthy before he caught it. And, a lot of people are really ignorant about what the potentiality is of that. But, really related to your question is, the world, we live in an interesting world, and there will be, challenging times, whether they're short periods or whether they're unexpected, whether they're expected or whatever it happens to be. Adversity is just part of this human experience. Some people have it a lot more than other people. And, I just received a copy of a book from a client of mine who wrote a book about the loss of her daughter, and her daughter was a toddler at the time. I mean, that's horrific. One of my very, very close friends, her 11-year-old daughter was killed in a school bus accident. And so unexpected. I was thinking about her just yesterday. It was 20 years ago now, 21 years ago now, but still the pain is there. And, it's like, how do you make sense of it? Sometimes, people will say, why did this happen? Why did this happen to me? And it's like, you don't always have answers, right? You don't always have answers. We don't always know, but we definitely have to deal with it. And being sad is part of the human experience too. I am not saying for one moment you'll no longer feel sad when you realize how to get your life working for you. Because, Savvy Wisdom on the front, it says it has the power to change your life. It does. But does that mean you'll never have adversity? No, it does not. We're all going to have adversity. I think it's important to really strengthen ourselves emotionally, meaning focusing on the positive emotions. But sadness, you're going to experience it. Go through it. I remember when my mother had passed away, and I found that hard. I was very close to her. And when she passed away, I found myself really, feeling challenged for a long period of time. And I remember chatting with a friend of mine, and he said, you just lost your mother for good. And after I lost my brother and my father, right? And my brother-in-law. So, I lost all these people within a relatively short period of time. It's part of the human experience. So you can have those experiences and look at them and say, what's the gift in this? Like my brother, as an example, we were very close, like you are with your brother, Gregory, we are very close as well. So I can cherish the experiences that I had. I was very blessed to have him in my life, to have that connection like you have with Gregory. And I'm going to cherish the memories. I think about how he used to make me laugh all the time. He was a very funny guy, funniest person I've ever met, ever. Like hilariously screaming funny.
I was saying that about my brother too. He's so funny.
Yeah, it's so great to have that. So we can cherish the memories, but just understand it's part of the human experience. It's going to pass. Yes, it does get easier. Like when I think about that woman who sent me a book about her losing her daughter, the fact that she's even doing that is tremendous. I think it's a great gift that she's bringing to the world as well, to help people deal with it in whatever unique way that they're going to deal with their loss too. It's just, it is part of this wonderful experience we have called life.
And one of the things in the book Savvy also talks to you about is shifting your focus. Yes. So I'd love for you to expand on that a little bit, because I think that is a huge gift. So often those negative feelings, those negative thoughts, that I think that happens to every single one of us. Even though I love to go, yay, and I love to be happy, it doesn't mean that I don't have challenges or things that I'm having to shift my focus. And I love that piece of wisdom. So will you expand a little bit on that?
Yeah, I think a great metaphor for that is like, if you imagine you're in a racing car, right? And you're on a track, you're going fast and you're going around this racing car. If you're staring, like, let's say you're about to go around the bend and you're staring at the corner, you're looking at that wall and you're thinking, oh my God, I'm going to hit that wall. You've got to shift your focus. You got to turn your head and look where you want to go. Because what happens is a lot of people are looking where they don't want to go, and then they crash against the wall and they go, how'd that happen? And they don't realize that they were focused on that happening. So we as humans, we have this great gift of choice. We get to choose what we're thinking. We get to choose what we're feeling. Nobody causes us, or nothing causes us to feel a certain thing. We're at choice always in all ways. And I think if you understand that, even when situations happen to you or challenges come up, you recognize, I have a choice right now. What am I going to focus on? And I suggest choose to focus on where you want to go. Choose to focus on a better feeling place. Like, choose to focus on things that are going to cause you to feel better, to be in a better energetic state, so that you're going to be attracting what you want and staying away from what you don't want.
Well, I think that's so important because, again, everyone has the power of choice and the power to shift our focus. We just have to be aware enough, and we have to be willing to shift our focus. Because I know sometimes when you're sad or when whatever has happened to you, it's almost like it's comfortable to be sad, or it's comfortable to just be stuck in the anger or the whatever's happening. And you have to decide, okay, I don't want to be stuck in it. And then actually make the effort to shift into a different focus. And that's, I think, a daily skill. And one of the things you also talk about is, the daily journaling. That's something that is really important for people. So as a morning routine, what would you share with people that they could do right now, every single day, as far as journaling or ways to shift their focus?
Absolutely. Well, in Savvy Wisdom, one of the first pieces of advice that Savvy gave to Sophie is to think about and write down what she's grateful for in her life. And so what Sophie did was she created what she called her Gimme Journal. She just gave it a fun name. And Gimme stands for Great in My Life. I probably should be Gimmel Journal rather than Gimme. And what that did was, because Sophie was suicidal, what it did was it created a shift in focus, right? It caused her to think about, well, what's great in my life? And that invited her to feel better, right? Because she had been raised in an environment where we're habitual feelers as well. We get into habits of things that we're doing every single day, but we're also habitual feelers. So getting into practices in the morning or whatever time of day where you're disciplined enough to do this every single day, one of the best things that I've ever done is write in my gratitude journal. So the gimme type of journal. What's great in my life? What am I grateful for? And when that is written, I write it as if it's already here in my life now. I write things that are in my life now, but then I write goals down as if they're already in my life too. So those are things that I write, but I also write out my top goal. I call it my stretch goal. I have a journal right here on my desk and I pull it out every day, every morning. I've already done it today. And I write out my top goal multiple times a day. Now, the reason why I do that is because writing creates thinking. And as I'm writing it, I'm feeling it, I'm connecting to it, I'm connecting to the outcome. So those are great practices for the morning.
I love that, because also I would say that that's also shifting your focus when you're starting to focus on, as you say over and over, what would you love? It's an incredibly important thing to have happen. And even the other one, the question, I think the two powerful questions that I love and that I use, that I learned from you and Bob Proctor, is not only what would you love, but also what is the good in this situation? Because there's more than one curveball that's happened over the last year from the pandemic and from all sorts of changes, and even like my brother moving to Hawaii. I mean, it's wonderful. He's in such a great place. I miss being able to run over to his house and have coffee with him. Right. So it is wonderful. And there is an amazing silver lining. And I think that asking that question is very powerful, right?
So true. Absolutely. I'm working with a new client of mine and she's in a job that she really detests. And, she's like talking about, how awful it is or whatever. And there's a lot of people that are in jobs that they don't like. And I said to her, find the good in it. And she's like, what are you talking about? I don't want to do this anymore. I said, I understand, but you're energetically involved in a vibration that is not going to attract any good to you because you're upset, you're stressed, you're frustrated, you're angry, and that's all going to attract like energy, regardless of if it's justifiable. I mean, you could have a boss who's a real, whatever. And, it could be justifiable, but you got to decide what it is you want to experience. You got to imagine that you're already having it, even as you're going about your day doing your current job, because there's something good in what you're doing, like you're getting a paycheck, right? There's people that aren't getting one of those right now. There's people that are desperate. You've got a guaranteed not guaranteed, but nothing's guaranteed except death and taxes, of course. But you're earning an income. There's a lot of great things. There's a lot of great value that you can find. So shift your focus over to that. And while you're building your new life.
Yeah, I think it's so important. So I know we're getting close to out of time. The one thing I wanted to make sure that we tell people is that this book, Savvy Wisdom, is being turned into a movie. So you've actually, to do that, you've applied all the techniques that not only in your real life with Bob Proctor, but also, there you go. Look at that.
My Oscar. Yes.
Oh, I love it.
I was actually talking to the producer this morning, and we were talking about the screenplay, and it's being written. They expect to have it written. It's probably going to be another month or so. So we created first the beat sheet, which is kind of like the outline of how the movie is going to go. Then the screenplay gets written. We've already talked to some A-list actors about playing the role. We have a savvy character already chosen, which I'm sure you've heard me talk about before. But it's in my mind, it's already done. Like, that's where I live. That's why, I keep my book Savvy Wisdom here on, and I have this little sign in front of it that says, "Your success is absolutely guaranteed." And so I put that right in front of the book, along with the Oscar and a photo of that actor. I can't show that here, but the A-list actor who's playing the role of Savvy, because I had one of my clients photoshopped him into a picture with me and Bob and my husband. And so, I'm already at the Oscars in my mind, already have the award in my mind. So I'm living it. I'm living it now.
Yay! Well, I'm so excited, and I can't wait to watch every little step of it. And of course, I'd love to have you back as we get closer and closer to that. And of course, anytime to have Bob as well, it'd be so much fun to have the two of you. But I wanted to make sure that we got this out so that people could go and get it. So they can get the book a few different ways. And of course, the Audible book I love, because I love hearing your voice and Bob's voice. But would you share with people, how can they get your book?
Yeah, so it's Savvy Wisdom. It's SAVY Wisdom. Savvy is a name. And they can get it on Amazon, anywhere on any of the Amazon sites.
Perfect. Well, Peggy McColl, I am so happy to have you today. And I'm so excited that you continue to give so much. You have a bunch of online courses as well for people. So if someone also has a story they want to share, would you tell them about your authors program?
Yeah, definitely. I've been working with authors now for 20 years and have the Complete Author Program, and it's called the Complete Author Program for a reason. And they can find out everything at peggymccall.com.
peggymccall.com. Okay, good. We'll make sure we put that in the notes. And I am so excited. As we go off the air, I would ask you if you would lift your voice